This is not a coincidence. This is not background noise in your day. This is not just another message drifting past your screen. This moment has weight, and heaven is pressing in right now. Archangel Michael stands as a witness to urgency, and his voice carries a warning wrapped in mercy. God is trying to speak to you right now, not later, not when things calm down, not when you feel more prepared. Right now. The reason this feels intense is because it is. The reason your spirit feels stirred is because time is involved. Heaven will not wait another second, not because God is harsh, but because delay carries consequences you cannot yet see. There are moments when God whispers, and there are moments when He interrupts. This is an interruption. Something in your life has reached a crossroads, and silence would be dangerous. Archangel Michael is not sent for trivial matters. He is sent when protection is required, when truth must cut through confusion, when spiritual resistance must be confronted head-on. His presence signals that what you are facing is not merely emotional, circumstantial, or random. There is a spiritual layer beneath it, and heaven is responding before you step into something unprepared. You may have felt pressure recently without knowing why, a heaviness you couldn't explain, a restlessness that doesn't go away even when things seem fine on the surface. That is not anxiety without cause. That is discernment awakening. God has been trying to get your attention through patterns, interruptions, delays, even frustrations. When gentle nudges were ignored, not out of rebellion, but distraction, heaven escalated the volume. But escalation is not punishment. It is protection. This message is urgent because timing matters more than comfort. Many people miss divine instruction not because they don't love God, but because they assume tomorrow will still be available. Archangel Michael's warning is clear. Postponement is the enemy's favorite tool. What God wants to say to you carries instructions that are time-sensitive. If you delay hearing, you delay alignment. And when alignment is delayed, unnecessary battles begin. Heaven won't wait another second because something is moving toward you. It may look like opportunity, conflict, decision, or change. You don't yet see its full shape, but heaven does. God sees the outcome of paths you haven't chosen yet. He sees what happens if you move without listening, and He sees what unfolds if you pause and obey. This is why the call is immediate. This is why you were prompted to open this now. Archangel Michael's voice does not come with panic, but it does come with gravity. He is not here to frighten you. He is here to fortify you. There is a difference. Fear weakens. Truth strengthens. And the truth is this: God has something to say that will reposition you. It will clarify what has felt confusing. It will expose what has been hidden. It will protect you from making a decision that looks harmless but carries long-term cost. You may be wondering why this feels so personal, so direct, almost as if someone knows exactly what you are facing. That is because God does. He has not lost track of you. He has not misjudged your capacity. And He has not abandoned you to figure things out alone. The urgency is not because you are failing. The urgency is because you are approaching a threshold. Heaven is deeply aware of how easy it is for you to minimize moments like this, to tell yourself you'll come back later, to assume this can wait. But Archangel Michael's message cuts through that instinct. Later is not promised the same clarity. Later is not guaranteed the same protection. Later may require recovery instead of prevention. This is the nature of divine warning. It arrives before impact. And when God warns, He is an act of love. He warns before missteps, before losses, before detours. He warns because He wants to preserve momentum, not repair damage. And that is why this message exists. not to overwhelm you, but to awaken you. Something is aligning right now between heaven and your life. You may not feel spiritual or strong or ready, but readiness is not the requirement. Willingness is. God is not asking you to understand everything yet. He is asking you to listen, to stop scrolling, to stop multitasking, to stop postponing stillness. Because what he is about to speak next will make sense of what has not made sense for a long time. Archangel Michael does not arrive quietly when a turning point is at hand. He stands at the edge of decision, guarding what matters, ensuring that you are not blindsided. His presence is a signal. Pay attention. This is one of those moments you will look back on and realize everything shifted here, not because everything changed instantly, but because you finally heard what heaven had been saying all along. This message is urgent because it is an invitation before it becomes a correction. It is a warning before it becomes a lesson. It is guidance before it becomes consequence. Heaven is leaning in, not pulling away. God is speaking, not hiding. And this is only the beginning. God is interrupting your life right now for a reason, and it is not to confuse you or overwhelm you. Divine interruptions always arrive when a pattern has been on long enough and continuing forward would cost more than pausing. You may feel like nothing dramatic is happening on the surface, yet heaven is intervening beneath it. God does not interrupt comfort. He interrupts direction. And right now, your direction matters more than your feelings. There are seasons when God allows routine, and there are seasons when He disrupts it. This is a disruption season. If you look closely, you will notice that things have not been flowing the way they used to. Doors that once opened easily now feel heavy. Conversations feel delayed. Plans feel foggy. Even rest has not fully restored you. These are not coincidences. They are signals. God interrupts because He sees a turn ahead that requires clarity you do not yet have. Many people assume God speaks only when they are praying deeply or searching intentionally. But some of the most urgent messages come when you are not looking for them. That is because God is not responding to your awareness. He is responding to necessity. Heaven interrupts when continuing on autopilot would place you at risk. And the risk is not always danger. Sometimes the risk is delay, detour, or dilution of purpose. You may be wondering why now? Why this moment? Why this timing? The answer is simple and weighty. Something is approaching a point of no return. Decisions compound. Patterns solidify. What feels like just another day to you may be a pivot point in the spirit. God interrupts to preserve what matters long-term, even if it feels inconvenient short-term. Think about how many times you have pushed through unease because it was easier than stopping. How many times you told yourself it would resolve on its own. God sees the accumulation of those moments. He knows when silence would equal consent to drift. Though He speaks, and when He speaks urgently, it is because drift has reached its limit. This interruption is also mercy. It is God saying, I will not let you walk blindly into what I can clearly see. He is not accusing you of wrongdoing. He is protecting you from misalignment. There is a difference. Misalignment does not mean you are far from God. It means something is slightly off, and slight misalignments create major outcomes over time. God is interrupting because He wants your attention before you give it fully to something else. Before your energy is committed. Before your words lock in a direction. Before your silence becomes agreement. Heaven values your future enough to disrupt your present. And this is where your response matters. Not tomorrow. Not after this finishes playing. Right now. Response is not about action yet. It is about agreement. Agreement that God has the right to interrupt. Agreement that his timing is wiser than yours. Agreement that listening now is better than repairing later. This is why engagement matters more than people realize. When you pause, listen, and respond, even in simple ways, you are telling heaven, I am available. Availability invites clarity. Resistance invites repetition. God will continue to interrupt until his voice is no longer treated as background noise. If this message is resonating, do not rush past that recognition. There is power in acknowledging alignment. This is a moment to lean in, not scroll away. And this is where I invite you to respond outwardly to what is happening inwardly. If you sense that God is speaking to you right now, take a second to like this message. That act may seem small, but it is a visible yes. It is you saying, I recognize this moment. Share this with someone who may also be in a season of confusion or delay, because divine interruptions often arrive through other people. And if you have not yet subscribed, do so now, not out of habit, but as a declaration that you want to remain positioned when God speaks again. Heaven responds to intentionality. When you create space, God fills it. When you acknowledge him, he draws nearer. This is not about algorithms. It is about alignment. Your engagement is not for visibility. It is for agreement. God is interrupting because he wants to redirect without resistance. He wants to speak before you commit emotionally, financially, spiritually, or relationally to something that looks right but is not aligned. There is a path ahead that requires discernment, and discernment only comes when you slow down enough to hear. Do not mistake urgency for fear. Fear rushes you forward blindly. God's urgency pulls you into awareness. He is not pulling you, he is calling you. And the call is not to panic but to listen. This interruption also means you are not forgotten. Heaven does not interrupt empty lives. God intervenes where destiny is involved. The very fact that this moment exists is evidence that your steps matter. Your choices matter. Your timing matters. God is interrupting now because what he wants to say next will explain why things have felt unsettled. It will reveal what has been forming beneath the surface. It will make sense of the resistance you have felt, but only if you stay open. This is not the end of the message. This is the threshold. And what comes next requires a listening heart. The spiritual alarm hath been activated, and this is not symbolic language. It is a real shift in the unseen realm. When Archangel Michael steps forward, it is because something has crossed from potential into motion. Alarms do not sound when danger is imagined. They sound when timing has narrowed. Right now, heaven is alert, attentive, and actively engaged with your life. Something has been detected before it reaches you. An intervention has already begun. You may not hear a sound, but your spirit can feel it. That inner tension you sensed is not confusion. It is awareness awakening. God does not wait until impact to protect his people. He warns, he positions, and he reinforces before the moment arrives. This alarm is not announcing destruction. It is announcing readiness. Heaven is preparing you to stand where you are, not run from it. Archangel Michael's presence signals that spiritual resistance have been identified. Resistance does not always look like opposition. Sometimes it looks like delay, distraction, or discouragement. The enemy reverse subtly with God subtly gives Bible basu. But passivity ends when alarms sound. This message exists because something attempted to move unnoticed, and heaven said no. There are things forming around you that you were never meant to carry. Pressures that do not belong to you. Decisions that would have slowly drained your authority. God sees the trajectory. He knows where a small compromise leads, where a rushed agreement ends, where silence becomes surrender. So he sends warning before weariness, clarity before confusion, and strength before strain. The alarm has also been activated because your discernment is increasing. You are beginning to sense when something is off, even if you cannot explain it. That is not suspicion. It is spiritual maturity rising. Heaven reinforces discernment with instruction, and instruction with protection. This message is reinforcement. You are not under attack because you are weak. You are being guarded because you matter. Archangel Michael doth not stand over insignificant ground. He guards what is valuable, what is contested, what carries future weight. Your next steps carry weight. Your decisions hold consequence. Your obedience will echo further than you realize. God is also alerting you to internal shifts. Sometimes the greatest danger is not external but internal drift. When passion dulls, when conviction softens, when urgency fades, the alarm calls you back to awareness. It says, pay attention to what you are tolerating. Not everything that feels familiar is safe. Not everything that feels calm is aligned. This is why the message feels serious without being threatening. Heaven is not angry. It is focused. Focus precedes action. God is not scrambling. He is strategic. He is positioning you to see what you could not see before. He is slowing you down so that wisdom can catch up with movement. The spiritual alarm also signals transition. Alarms often sound at thresholds, when one phase is ending and another is beginning. Transitions are vulnerable moments. Old patterns resist release. New paths require courage. Heaven increases protection during these moments because distraction here can cost momentum later. If you have felt like something is about to change but you can't name it, that is because you are standing between what was and what will be. The alarm is not telling you to fear the next step. It is telling you to take it consciously. Awareness turns uncertainty into preparedness. Archangel Michael's role here is not just defense, but alignment. He stands where divine order must be enforced. He brings clarity where confusion has lingered. He reinforces boundaries that have been quietly eroding. His presence reminds you that you are not navigating this season alone. This message is also calling you to stillness. Alarms demand attention. They interrupt noise. God is asking you to quiet external voices so you can hear internal truth. The next instruction will not compete with chaos. It will come when you are listening. Do not dismiss what you feel right now. That stirring is not imagination. It is recognition. Something in you knows this matters. And that knowing is the beginning of obedience. Hold on. What comes next changes everything. What heaven reveals after the alarm will explain why it had to sound now, and why your response in this moment carries more power than you think. Type I am awake in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 814 is now activated. As this spiritual alarm echoes, hear this clearly. When you sow into this message, you help awaken souls who are still sleeping. The Lord says, as you release, I release rivers through you because every seed becomes light where darkness once ruled. This is not support for a channel. This is fuel for a mission heaven is actively breathing on. I am speaking directly to you now. This is your moment to respond. Just as the alarm was urgent, so is this act of obedience. When you give through super thanks, membership, with a PayPal link in the description or QR code on screen, you become part of the warning that saves others. I speak blessing over every giver. May your harvest rise swiftly and your discernment increase. Do it now. Heaven knows things you do not yet see, and that is why this message arrived before clarity did. God never reveals everything at once, not because he withholds truth, but because timing protects the heart. Right now, there are layers of reality surrounding your situation that have not yet surfaced in the natural, but they are already fully visible in the spirit. What feels uncertain to you is already mapped out in heaven, and what feels confusing has already been accounted for. God sees outcomes before choices are finalized. He sees how conversations will shift, how environments will change, how decisions made quickly will echo long after the moment has passed. You are not being asked to predict the future. You are being asked to trust the one who already sees it. This is why heaven speaks before events unfold. Warning is not reaction. It is foresight. There are doors around you that look similar on the surface, but lead to very different destinations. Some are distractions dressed as opportunities. Others are tests disguised as delays. Heaven knows which is which, even when you cannot tell yet. What you might label as frustration could actually be divine insulation, God slowing you down so you do not step into something prematurely. Heaven also sees what has been forming quietly. Intentions of others. Shifts in loyalty. Changes in atmosphere. Not everything that smiles is aligned. Not every open door is safe. God is shielding you from information overload by giving you instruction first. When you know what to do, you do not need to know everything that could have happened. There are also dangers you have already avoided without realizing it. Paths you almost took. Words you almost said. Agreements you almost made. That pause you felt, that hesitation, was not weakness. It was guidance. Heaven redirected you gently before redirection had to become forceful. This message is confirmation that God has been actively guarding you, even when you were unaware of the threats. Heaven knows the weight you have been carrying silently, the internal questions you have not voiced, the exhaustion that prayer alone did not seem to lift. God sees where you have been strong longer than you should have had to be. He also sees where pressure has accumulated and where relief is needed before collapse occurs. Silence from God would have allowed you to keep pushing until damage happened. His voice intervenes so that healing can precede harm. There are also opportunities ahead that require preparation, not panic. Blessings can overwhelm when they arrive to an unprepared mind. God speaks now so that when the moment comes, you recognize it instead of fearing it. Heaven does not rush gifts, it readies people. What you do not yet see includes the role you play in something larger. Your obedience is not isolated. It connects to other lives, other timelines, other outcomes. A delayed response from you can slow momentum for others. A timely yes can unlock movement beyond you. Heaven knows the chain reaction attached to your choices. God also sees the traps that look like relief, the shortcuts that promise rest but steal authority, the compromises that feel small but erode conviction. You are not being judged for being tired. You are being protected from choosing comfort over calling in a vulnerable moment. Heaven sees the cost long before it is paid. This message is not revealing everything yet because some truths are only safe once you are positioned to act on them. Information without readiness creates anxiety. Instruction creates peace. God is giving you what you need now, not everything you want to know at once. Heaven also knows what you are capable of becoming in the next season. Potential is visible to God long before it feels real to you. He is not speaking based on who you were, but who you are becoming. And that future version of you requires alignment today. You may be tempted to interpret God's silence on certain details as absence. It is not absence, it is trust. He trusts that you will listen, that you will stay attentive, that you will not rush ahead of wisdom. Heaven is not withholding, it is pacing you. There is also mercy in what you do not see yet. Some revelations come only after obedience because they would overwhelm you beforehand. God reveals step by step so that faith stays engaged and fear does not take over. He is leading you, not dragging you. Heaven knows the timing of release, the moment when clarity will flood in and everything will make sense. That moment is coming. This message is not the conclusion. It is the preparation. You are being readied to recognize truth when it appears, to respond without hesitation, and to move without regret. Trust that heaven sees more than you do, and that is exactly why you are being guided now. There is a cost to ignoring this message, and it is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to sober you. God speaks plainly about delay because delay quietly drains what urgency preserves. Ignoring divine instruction does not always lead to immediate disaster. More often, it leads to gradual loss. Loss of clarity, loss of peace, loss of momentum. The danger is subtle, which is why it is so often underestimated. Delayed obedience is still disobedience, even when intentions are good. Many people assume that because they mean well, timing does not matter. But in the spiritual realm, timing is everything. Heaven moves with precision. When God says now, He is not being dramatic. He is being exact. Ignoring the moment does not cancel the instruction. It postpones alignment, and postponement creates vulnerability. The cost is rarely paid upfront. It accumulates quietly. You may feel fine at first. Life may continue normally, but something begins to feel heavier than it should. Decisions take more effort. Peace becomes harder to maintain. What once felt clear now feels clouded. These are not random shifts. They are symptoms of misalignment. Ignoring this message also strengthens resistance. When God speaks and we hesitate, the voice of doubt grows louder. Gluttony replaces conviction. Fear replaces discernment. Over time, what was once a gentle nudge must become a louder correction, not because God is impatient, but because distance has increased. The further you drift, the stronger the pull required to bring you back. There is also a cost to your authority. Spiritual authority is maintained through obedience. When instruction is delayed, authority weakens, not because God removes it, but because confidence erodes. You begin to second-guess what you once knew. You hesitate where you once moved boldly. A hesitation opens space for unnecessary struggle. God is not warning you because you are rebellious. He is warning you because you are human. Humans delay when overwhelmed, tired, or uncertain. God factors that in. That is why He speaks clearly now, so you do not have to learn through loss what you could learn through listening. Ignoring this message may also cost you protection you did not know was active. Some safeguards only remain in place when instruction is followed. When alignment shifts, protection adjusts. Not as punishment, but as consequence. Heaven does not force obedience. He honors choice. And choices carry outcomes. There is also the cost of regret. Regret is not condemnation. It is the pain of hindsight. It is realizing later that you knew better, felt the warning, sensed the pause, and moved anyway. God wants to spare you that pain. At His mercy speaking, you may be tempted to think, I'll deal with this later when things calm down. But calm does not always come before clarity. Sometimes clarity comes first so calm can follow. Waiting for the perfect emotional state to obey often results in missed windows. God speaks into real life, not ideal conditions. Ignoring this message also affects others. Your life is not isolated. Your decisions ripple outward. When you delay alignment, those connected to you may feel it too, through tension, confusion, or delay in their own paths. Obedience accelerates more than just your journey. It clears the way for others. The cost is also spiritual fatigue. Carrying what God meant to address drains energy. You were not designed to navigate everything alone. Instruction lightens the load. Silence makes it heavier. When God speaks and you listen, burden shifts. When you ignore, pressure remains. This is why heaven is speaking firmly but lovingly. God would rather warn you now than comfort you later after unnecessary loss. His desire is prevention, not repair. Guidance, not recovery. Alignment, not regret. You may feel resistance rising even as you hear this. That resistance is not rebellion. It is fear of change. Change threatens familiarity, even when familiarity is unproductive. God is asking you to trust that what He is leading you away from cannot sustain you, and what He is leading you toward will. Ignoring this message does not make God withdraw. He remains present, but the journey becomes harder than it needs to be. Detours replace direct paths. Lessons repeat. Cycles extend. None of this is because God is cruel. It is because alignment was delayed. This is the weight of the moment. Not fear. Not pressure. Wait. The weight of knowing that listening now is lighter than carrying consequences later. Heaven is inviting you to choose wisdom over comfort, obedience over ease, and trust over delay. You are not being threatened. You are being protected from paying a price you do not need to pay. Archangel Michael's assignment over your life in this season is not accidental, and it is not symbolic. It is strategic. When heaven assigns Michael, it is because enforcement, defense, and divine order are required. This is not about gentle guidance alone. This is about authority being reestablished where it has been quietly challenged. Something attempted to cross a boundary in your life, and heaven responded by reinforcing it. Michael stands where divine will must be protected. He is sent when confusion must be cut through, when fear must be confronted, and when hesitation must give way to clarity. His assignment over your life right now signals that you are standing on contested ground, not because you are weak, but because what you carry matters. Valuable territory is always challenged. Destiny attracts resistance long before it manifests. You may have felt unusually drained by things that never used to affect you this deeply. That is not because you are losing strength. It is because something has been pressing against your authority. Spiritual pressure often masquerades as emotional exhaustion. Heaven does not ignore that. Michael is assigned to reinforce what has been under strain, to restore strength before depletion turns into discouragement. This assignment also involves reclaiming territory you unknowingly surrendered, not through failure but through fatigue. When people grow tired, they tolerate what they would normally confront. Boundaries soften. Convictions blur. Michael's presence signals a restoration of sharpness. What you allowed out of weariness is now being addressed with authority. There is also an aspect of protection woven into this assignment. Some seasons expose you more than others. Transition seasons are especially vulnerable. As you move from one phase to another, old coverings shift and new ones must be established. Archangel Michael stands in these moments to guard the transition itself. He ensures that what you are leaving behind cannot follow you into what is next. This assignment is not about fear of attack. It is about confidence in defense. You are not being warned because something will overpower you. You are being reinforced so that nothing can. Heaven is proactive, not reactive. Michael's role is to secure what God has already declared, not to fight for outcomes that are uncertain. You are also being reminded of who you are. Authority weakens when identity blurs. Michael's presence restores clarity about your position. You are not meant to navigate this season passively. You are not meant to absorb everything silently. There is a time for patience, and there is a time for standing firm. This is a season of firmness. This does not mean aggression. It means alignment. When you are aligned, resistance loses leverage. Michael does not operate in chaos. He enforces order. Order in thought. Order in boundaries. Order in decision-making. Confusion has lingered because order was under pressure. That pressure is now being relieved. You may notice a shift in how you respond to things. What once unsettled you may suddenly feel clear. What once intimidated you may lose its weight. This is not emotional fluctuation. It is spiritual reinforcement. Authority feels like calm, not noise. Strength feels like clarity, not strain. Archangel Michael's assignment also involves timing. Some actions must wait. Others must be taken immediately. Discernment sharpens when authority is restored. You will begin to sense when to move and when to pause without second-guessing yourself. That confidence is not arrogance. It is alignment. There is also an unseen battle this assignment interrupts. Some struggles never reach the surface because they are handled before manifestation. Heaven fights in realms you do not see so you can walk in peace in the ones you do. Michael's presence means something was stopped before it could become visible conflict. This assignment does not last forever. It lasts as long as the season requires. But while it is active, you are covered. Not isolated from challenge, but guarded within it. You are being strengthened to move forward, not sheltered to stand still. God assigns Michael when outcomes matter, when decisions echo, when obedience unlocks progression. This is not a small season. That does not mean it must be overwhelming. It means it is meaningful. You are not expected to understand everything Michael is guarding. You are expected to trust that heaven is actively involved. Protection is not always loud. Sometimes it feels like peace returning, confidence settling, and clarity rising where fog once lingered. This assignment is a sign of value, not vulnerability. Heaven does not deploy guardians where nothing is at stake. Something important is unfolding, and you are not facing it alone. Stand where you are with confidence. Authority has been reinforced. Boundaries have been restored. And heaven is watching closely as you step into what comes next. This is the moment heaven has been waiting for, and that truth carries more weight than emotion alone can express. There are seasons when God waits patiently, allowing growth, allowing preparation, allowing time to shape understanding. And then there are moments when waiting ends, not because heaven is impatient, but because alignment has finally come within reach. You are standing in one of those moments now. Heaven does not rush people into purpose. It prepares them quietly, often invisibly, until the internal foundation can sustain what the external moment will demand. You may feel like this moment arrived suddenly, but it did not. It had been forming through experiences, disappointments, prayers that seemed unanswered, and delays that felt unnecessary. All of it was shaping discernment. All of it was building capacity. This is the moment heaven has been waiting for because something in you is now able to respond differently than before. You may not feel stronger, but you are steadier. You may not feel braver, but you are clearer. Readiness is not loud confidence. It is quiet alignment. And alignment is what heaven responds to. Many people miss moments like this because they expect them to look dramatic. They wait for signs that feel overwhelming or unmistakable. But divine moments often arrive gently, wrapped in clarity rather than chaos. This moment feels significant not because everything is shaking, but because something is settling. Heaven hath been waiting for your willingness more than your perfection, waiting for your attention more than your understanding, waiting for your consent to be guided rather than your certainty about the outcome. God does not require you to know every step. He requires you to trust the next one. This is also a moment of narrowing. Options that once felt open may begin to close. Paths that once seemed possible may lose appeal. This is not loss, it is focus. Heaven narrows paths to reduce distraction. What remains is what matters. You may sense a quiet urgency, not panic, but importance. That is the signal of alignment. When urgency is rooted in fear, it pushes. When urgency is rooted in purpose, it pulls. Heaven is pulling you forward, not pushing you from behind. This moment is also about choice. Heaven has prepared, protected, warned, and positioned, but it will not choose for you. Choice is sacred. Your response now determines momentum. Not because God withholds favor, but because favor flows through alignment. There is a thin line between breakthrough and missed opportunity, and that line is often timing. The same action taken too early or too late can produce different outcomes. Heaven hath been adjusting circumstances so that this moment falls within that narrow window where obedience produces maximum impact. This is why things that once made sense may now feel misaligned. Heaven has shifted the atmosphere. What worked before may not work now. That does not mean it was wrong. It means the season has changed. And when seasons change, methods must change too. Heaven hath been waiting for you to notice that the old ways no longer fit. That restlessness you felt was not dissatisfaction. It was transition. Comfort zones shrink when growth is required. Familiar patterns lose their hold when expansion is near. This moment is also marked by clarity about what you cannot carry forward. Some habits, some relationships, some mindsets. Heaven is not asking you to abandon everything, only what cannot sustain what is coming next. Release is not loss when it creates capacity. God hath been waiting for this moment because he knows what obedience now will unlock later. Some doors only open after the step is taken, not before. Faith moves first. Understanding follows. This is not manipulation. It is design. You may be tempted to delay just a little longer, to wait until things feel more stable or certain. But certainty often comes after movement, not before. Heaven has stabilized what needs to be stable. What remains is trust. This is also a moment of partnership. Heaven is not acting alone. God is inviting you into cooperation. When you move in alignment, heaven moves with you. When you pause unnecessarily, momentum slows, not because God withdraws, but because partnership requires participation. Heaven hath been waiting for this moment because resistance has been addressed, protection hath been established, and clarity hath been released. The environment is prepared. The question is no longer whether God is ready. The question is whether you will respond. This is not a demand. It is an invitation weighted with purpose. An invitation to step fully into awareness, into alignment, into obedience that feels steady rather than forced. Moments like this do not announce themselves loudly. They are recognized inwardly. Something in you knows this matters. That knowing is your cue. Heaven is watching, not with pressure but with anticipation. A shift is triggered the moment you respond, not when everything changes around you, but when something realigns within you. Heaven responds to movement, even small movement, because movement signals agreement. The shift does not always announce itself with noise or emotion. Sometimes it arrives as peace where tension once lived, clarity where confusion lingered, or courage where hesitation once ruled. But make no mistake, something changes the instant you say yes. This is how divine alignment works. God does not wait for you to have perfect faith. He responds to willing faith. When you respond, even quietly, heaven registers it. What was held back begins to move forward. What was paused begins to flow. The shift is not random. It is activated. Many people expect the shift to happen first so they can respond later. But in the kingdom, response precedes manifestation. Obedience unlocks momentum. When you respond, chains you did not know were attached begin to loosen. Not all at once, not dramatically, but effectively. Resistance loses leverage when agreement is established. This shift also changes how you see. Perspective adjusts before circumstances do. You begin to notice what no longer fits. You begin to sense what needs to be released. You become less reactive and more intentional. That is not emotional maturity alone. It is spiritual recalibration. Heaven honors responsiveness because responsiveness keeps you teachable. A teachable heart stays aligned. An aligned heart stays protected. Protection is not always about shielding you from hardship. Sometimes it is about guiding you through it without loss of identity or direction. When you respond, you also interrupt cycles. Some cycles persist not because they are strong, but because they are familiar. Familiarity can masquerade as inevitability. But the moment you respond differently, the cycle weakens. Heaven amplifies that difference. Your shift also affects your spiritual sensitivity. You begin to hear more clearly, not necessarily audibly, but inwardly. Discernment sharpens. You become quicker to sense when something is off and calmer when something is right. Noise loses its pull. Clarity gains ground. There is also a shift in authority. When you respond, you stand in agreement with heaven rather than waiting for proof. That posture carries authority. Authority does not shout, it settles. It brings stability into spaces that once felt unstable. You may notice that certain pressures ease after you respond. Not because challenges disappear, but because they no longer dominate your attention. Perspective changes weight. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once felt urgent becomes ordered. This shift is also cumulative. Each responsive moment builds upon the last. Confidence grows, not self-confidence, but God-confidence. You trust His timing more. You question less. You move with greater intention. Heaven does not waste responses. Every yes is recorded. Every act of alignment compounds. You are not responding into a void. You are responding into a system designed to honor obedience. This is why the enemy resists response more than anything else. Confusion, delay, distraction, all aim to prevent movement. But once movement happens, resistance loses its advantage. The shift has already begun. Do not underestimate what has already changed simply because it feels quiet. Some of the most powerful shifts are silent. Foundations reset. Directions recalibrate. Futures adjusted. You may not see immediate results, but you will notice internal confirmation. A steadiness. A knowing. A sense that you are no longer stuck where you were. That is the shift. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed, because the next phase builds on this response, and what heaven unfolds next explains why this moment mattered so much. Type "I step in alignment" in the comments if this speaks to you. Blessing code 639 is now activated. As this shift begins, hear this. When you give, you become part of the river God is using to carry truth to waiting hearts. The Lord says, "What you release in obedience, I multiply in impact, and your seed becomes light for those still searching." I am speaking to you directly. This is your moment to act with heaven. Just as you responded spiritually, respond tangibly now. Through super thanks, channel membership, or the PayPal link and QR code in the description, you help this message reach souls God is calling. I bless every giver with increase, clarity, and divine return. Act now. Your response determines the outcome, not because God withholds His goodness, but because outcomes are shaped by alignment. Heaven releases direction, protection, and opportunity, but it is your response that activates them in real time. Two people can hear the same instruction and experience entirely different results based on what they do next. This is not about worthiness. It is about willingness. Right now, heaven is watching how you respond to what you have already heard. Not with judgment, but with attentiveness. God honors response because response reveals trust. When you act on what you receive, you are saying, I believe you know what I cannot see. That belief creates movement. Silence creates stagnation. Your response does not need to be dramatic. It does not need to be perfect. It needs to be intentional. Small, aligned actions carry more weight than large, delayed ones. A quiet yes moves heaven more than loud hesitation. The spiritual realm responds to alignment, not performance. Many people assume outcomes are fixed, that if God has decided something, it will happen no matter what. But Scripture and life both reveal a partnership. God initiates. Humans respond. Outcomes are shaped in that interaction. Prayer invites. Obedience positions. Response activates. This is why timing matters. Responding late is not the same as responding now. Some doors are time-sensitive. Some protections are conditional on alignment. Some opportunities require readiness when they appear. God is faithful, but He will not override your agency. Choice is honored, even when it delays blessing. Your response also determines the level of clarity you receive next. God often gives light for the next step only after the current one is taken. Not because He is secretive, but because trust grows through movement. When you respond, more is revealed. When you stall, clarity stalls with you. There is also a communal aspect to response. Your obedience affects more than just you. It shifts environments. It changes conversations. It influences outcomes for people connected to you. Heaven sees the web of impact, even when you only see your own situation. This is where engagement becomes more than interaction. It becomes agreement. When you respond outwardly to what is happening inwardly, you reinforce alignment. That is why I invite you again, intentionally, to act. If this message is speaking to you, let that response be visible. Like this message is a sign of agreement. Comment what resonated with you, not for visibility, but for confirmation. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because obedience multiplies when it is shared. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now as a declaration that you want to remain positioned when God speaks again. These actions are not empty gestures. They are moments of response. They tell heaven, I am paying attention. And the attention invites instruction. Your response also determines whether cycles repeat or end. Some patterns persist not because they are powerful, but because they are unchallenged. When you respond differently, cycles lose momentum. Heaven amplifies the difference. Change begins where response changes. You may feel resistance even now. That resistance is not always external. Sometimes it is internal hesitation. Fear of getting it wrong. Fear of a change. Fear of commitment. God is not asking you to eliminate fear before responding. He is asking you to respond despite it. Courage follows movement, not the other way around. This is also where testimony begins. Not at the breakthrough, but at the response. Every story of transformation starts with a moment like this, when someone chose alignment over delay. You are standing in that moment now. Heaven is not pressuring you, but it is inviting you. The invitation is serious because the outcome matters. You are not being rushed. You are being called forward. Do not underestimate the significance of this response window. Windows close quietly. They do not announce their end. They simply pass. But when you respond within them, outcomes accelerate. What you choose now shapes what unfolds next. Not everything, but enough to matter. Enough to change direction. Enough to bring peace where uncertainty once lived. Hold this awareness with you as you move forward, because what comes next builds on the response you make here. The next revelation depends on this alignment, and you will recognize it more clearly because you chose to respond now. Your response matters. Heaven is listening. God is speaking, but hearing Him requires more than physical presence. It requires spiritual positioning. Many people are close to God but not attentive to Him. They pray, they listen, they hope, yet their inner posture remains divided. Positioning is not about effort, it is about orientation. Where your attention rests determines what you hear. And right now, God is inviting you to adjust your posture so His voice can land clearly. Hearing God is not about volume. His voice is not competing with noise, it withdraws from it. When life becomes crowded, the voice of God does not shout louder, it waits for space. This is why distractions matter more than people realize. Distraction dulls sensitivity. It fragments attention. Over time, it trains the heart to skim instead of listen. Positioning begins with stillness, but not the absence of activity, rather, the presence of focus. You can be busy and still positioned if your spirit is attentive. And you can be quiet and still misaligned if your thoughts are scattered. God speaks where attention is anchored. Right now, there may be too many inputs shaping your decisions. Opinions, fears, past experiences, expectations of others. None of these are evil, but when they dominate, they muffle clarity. God's voice often comes as a steady conviction beneath the noise. To hear it, you must be willing to quiet competing influences. Positioning also requires honesty. God does not speak clearly where pretense lives. When you pretend to be stronger than you are, calmer than you feel, or more certain than you truly are, you block the very clarity you seek. God speaks into truth, not performance. When you admit uncertainty, clarity finds room. There is also a posture of obedience that sharpens hearing. Hearing is not just about receiving words, it is about being willing to act on them. When the heart is resistant, the ears grow dull. When the heart is willing, discernment sharpens. God trusts instruction to those who are prepared to respond. You may have noticed that clarity comes more easily after obedience than before it. That is not coincidence. It is design. God reveals progressively so that faith remains engaged. When you position yourself as responsive, revelation flows more freely. Positioning also involves releasing urgency driven by anxiety. Anxious urgency distorts hearing. It rushes interpretation. It turns guidance into pressure. God's urgency feels different. It brings focus without panic. To hear Him clearly, you must release the need to control outcomes and receive instruction instead. This is where surrender becomes practical. Not surrender as resignation, but surrender as trust. Trust that God's timing is wiser than your anxiety. Trust that His silence on certain details is intentional, not neglectful. Trust that what you need to know will arrive when you are ready to act on it. Positioning also means guarding what you allow to shape your inner world. What you repeatedly consume trains your attention. If your mind is constantly filled with fear-based narratives, clarity becomes harder to sustain. God's voice brings peace even when the instruction is challenging. Peace is often the confirmation of alignment. Here is also the matter of expectation. People who expect God to speak often hear Him more clearly than those who assume silence. Expectation tunes the heart. When you approach moments like this with openness rather than skepticism, sensitivity increases. God responds to expectancy. You are being invited to reposition not because you are far off, but because you are close. Fine adjustments matter most when precision is required. A slight shift in posture can make the difference between clarity and confusion. Positioning is also about patience. Not passive waiting, but active attentiveness. God does not rush His voice, and He does not repeat unnecessarily. When you slow your inner pace, you hear what was already being said. This is not about striving to hear better. It is about making room. Room for silence. Room for conviction. Room for correction if needed. Room for confirmation. God fills the space you create. You may be surprised by how simple the next instruction feels once you are positioned. God often speaks plainly when the heart is ready. Complexity usually comes from internal resistance, not divine mystery. Do not be discouraged if clarity does not arrive instantly. Positioning is a process, not a switch. Each moment of attentiveness strengthens the next. Each act of obedience sharpens discernment further. God is speaking. He is that stopped. The question is not whether He is communicating. The question is whether your posture allows you to receive without distortion. Adjust your position. Quiet competing voices. Anchor your attention. And you will hear what you need to hear, exactly when you need to hear it. What happens after this message ends is just as important as what happened while you were listening. Divine encounters do not conclude when the words stop. They begin unfolding in the quiet moments that follow. The true impact of this message will not be measured by how it made you feel, but by what it awakens within you over the coming hours and days. God often speaks in layers, and the deepest layer is revelation that continues after attention has settled. You may notice subtle shifts first, thoughts that return with new clarity, decisions that no longer feel as heavy, questions that once caused anxiety beginning to lose their grip. These are signs that something has already taken root. God's word does not evaporate when spoken. It works. It moves quietly, reshaping perception before it reshapes circumstances. After this message, expect heightened awareness. Not fear, but sensitivity. You may become more conscious of what drains you and what strengthens you. Conversations may feel different. Environments may feel louder or calmer than before. This is not imagination. It is discernment increasing. When God speaks, He tunes the heart to recognize alignment and misalignment more clearly. You may also experience moments of confirmation. A phrase repeated elsewhere. A sudden insight during routine activity. A sense of peace when you make a certain choice. These are not coincidences, they are reinforcements. God often confirms what He has spoken to anchor it deeper. Confirmation strengthens resolve and quiets doubt. There may also be resistance after this message. Not because something went wrong, but because clarity challenges what was comfortable. Old habits do not release easily. Familiar patterns may try to reclaim attention. This is normal. Awareness disrupts autopilot. Do not interpret resistance as failure. Interpret it as evidence that change is underway. You might feel prompted to adjust small things. How you start your day. What you give your attention to. Who you listen to. These nudges matter. God often initiates transformation through simple adjustments rather than dramatic overhauls. Small obedience sustains long-term alignment. After this message, silence may feel different. Not empty but expectant. God sometimes speaks next through peace rather than instruction. Peace is not the absence of challenge, it is the presence of trust. When peace settles, it often means you are aligned, even if the path ahead is not fully visible. You may also notice emotional recalibration. Reactions that once felt automatic may soften. Patience may increase. Frustration may lessen. Or clarity may replace indecision. These internal shifts are often the first fruit of obedience. External change follows internal alignment. Do not rush to evaluate what happens next. God's work is not always immediate, but it is always intentional. Resist the urge to measure progress too quickly. Trust the process that has already begun. Faith grows when you allow space for unfolding rather than demanding instant proof. You may also feel drawn to stillness more than usual. A desire to reflect, to listen, to be intentional. Honor that. Stillness is not withdrawal, it is positioning. God often deepens communication after the initial message through quiet attentiveness. There may be moments when you are tempted to doubt whether this was real, whether it mattered. A doubt is common after moments of clarity. The mind tries to reassert control. When that happens, return to what you know, not what you feel. Remember the conviction, not the emotion. You are not expected to carry this message perfectly. You are expected to carry it honestly. Let it shape you gradually. Let it inform decisions without pressure. Let it guide without anxiety. After this message, you may also notice increased discernment about timing, and knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to move and when to wait. Timing sensitivity is a sign of spiritual maturity. It develops through listening, not striving. God does not abandon what He initiates. What began here will continue. The seeds planted will grow at the pace required to sustain lasting fruit. Trust that heaven is still engaged, still attentive, still guiding. What happens next is not about dramatic change. It is about consistent alignment. Alignment produces peace. Peace produces clarity. Clarity produces confident movement. Carry this awareness forward gently. You do not need to explain it to everyone. You do not need to justify it. You only need to live from it. This message does not end here. It continues in how you listen, how you choose, and how you trust in the days ahead. Heaven is still near. God is still speaking. And you are more prepared to hear than you were before. This is heaven's final word in this moment. Not an ending, but a sealing. Everything you have heard has been leading here, to assurance rather than anxiety, to confidence rather than fear. God is not speaking to unsettle you. He is speaking to anchor you. What began with urgency now settles into peace, because divine urgency always resolves in clarity when it is received. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not out of reach. Heaven had been involved in your life far longer than you realized, ranging, guarding, redirecting, and preparing. Even the moments that felt confusing were not wasted. God wastes nothing. He repurposes everything for alignment. The assurance heaven gives you now is simple and powerful. You are being guided. Not forced. Not rushed. Guided. Guidance does not remove challenge, but it removes fear from challenge. You are not walking blindly into what comes next. Light will meet each step as you take it. God's tone toward you is not disappointment. It is affirmation. He sees your effort. He sees your questions. He sees the weight you have carried quietly. And He wants you to know that you have not disappointed Him by needing time, clarity, or reassurance. Needing God is not weakness. It is relationship. This message closes with peace because peace is the confirmation of alignment. Even if circumstances have not changed yet, something within you has settled. That settling is not resignation. It is trust. Trust that God is ahead of you. Trust that heaven is not silent. Trust that obedience is not risky when God is involved. You are not expected to remember every word spoken here. What matters is what remains with you. The sense of awareness. The quiet conviction. The clarity that rises when you consider your next step. Those are the fingerprints of divine guidance. Heaven's final word to you is this: you are covered. Covered in wisdom when decisions come. Covered in discernment when options compete. Covered in peace when outcomes are still forming. Covered in strength when courage is required. Covered in mercy when learning continues. Do not rush forward from this moment. Carry it gently. Let it inform your pace, your choices, your conversations. God does not lead through pressure. He leads through presence. And His presence is near. You may still face questions. That is normal. Faith does not eliminate questions. It anchors you while you walk through them. What you will notice now is that questions no longer paralyze you. They invite you to listen more closely. Heaven is not asking you to strive harder. It is asking you to stay aware. Awareness keeps you aligned. Alignment keeps you at peace. Peace keeps you steady. As this message closes, know that you are not alone in what comes next. You are not stepping into uncertainty without covering. You are stepping into a season where listening will be easier, clarity will come quicker, and trust will feel more natural. God's assurance rests on you now, not because everything is resolved, but because everything is held. Held by wisdom greater than yours. Held by timing more precise than yours. Held by love deeper than fear. This is not the end of heaven's conversation with you. It is the beginning of a quieter, steadier dialogue, one that unfolds through daily life, small decisions, and gentle confirmations. Walk forward without hurry. Listen without anxiety. Respond without fear. Heaven is still near, still guiding, still speaking. Type "I receive divine peace" in the comments if this message has anchored you. Blessing code 902 is now activated. As this message seals, hear this as a final charge. What you give now becomes a lamp for souls still searching in the dark. The Lord declares, as you pour out, I pour back, pressed down and overflowing, because obedience opens the heavens. I am speaking to you personally. This is your moment to act with purpose. This mission continues because faithful hearts respond when God speaks. Release your seed now through Super Thanks channel membership, with the PayPal donation link and QR code in the description, and become part of what heaven is expanding. I bless every giver with peace, increase, and divine reward. Do it now.